In music, if you strike a chord and your instrument is perfectly in tune, it just has that resonance, and that applies in stone and material and the making of a piece of work also. If there's that clarity and everything is properly handled and worked through, it just has that resonance of permanence, and that's one of the things one would seek in work. Whereas with a lot of materials, one can look to the making of something for one's lifetime, but with stone it lasts aeons of time, and I think that's always a great guideline to anybody who wants to go into the stone world, that if you take your time and you discipline yourself and you get your work right and proper and it reads well on day one, in 1,000 years it'll also read. In designing work, one really needs a clear insight into what the purpose and function of what you're making is. And if you have those reasonable guidelines, that leads on. After that, one develops proportion, the tactile feel of a piece of work, how it reads as a completed object. And but the primary one in design is, it's a classic one in architecture: form follows function. And you grasp those, where those pieces of inspiration come from is one of life's great mysteries. But for some reason, ideas come into your head, and if they gel, they're very, very successful. I wanted letters that were architectural in scale and were quite dramatic. And rather than it just being a series of letters, abstract forms set on the building, that they actually became an integral part of the structure. The face of the letters are concave, and in afternoon light, especially with the building facing towards the east, so from on about midday, the sun would show the letters in great depth and character that way. And lettering is that lovely thing that one is never conscious of it. It just enhances the building, which it ought to, rather than be self-effacing or something like that. So, as I said before, the gorgeous thing about architectural lettering is that one gets to explore scale and do very dramatic things with letter form. So when the chap who was giving me a hand, we'd completed our day's work, we were just leaning back on the railings on the opposite side of the road, chatting away, and these children came out from having visited the zoo, and one child came along and just put his finger on the bottom of the D and went D, bottom of the B, U, Z, O, O, and we gave a big cheer at the end. And if one comes along and looks at all the bottoms of the letters, those greasy finger marks are still there, so other children have followed that on as well, and that was a lovely interactive thing. Certainly with pieces of lettering on larger buildings high up, one doesn't get an opportunity to play like that. The title of the television station is Radio Telefischer, and the Irish uncial letter, as one finds in the Book of Kells, is a gorgeous alphabet. In a Roman alphabet, one would have letter forms that are very masculine and feminine, whereas in the uncial letter, all the forms have a lovely femininity about them, and that makes it very appealing and attractive. A curious thing about that sign is that the ascender and descender are very close to each other in the middle, the L in Telefiche and the F in Telefiche also, and it almost has a resonance of like strumming a guitar string or something, just that vibration. And I think that's subliminally if one is conscious of those things, you can read them into the design of a pattern of letters, and that, I think, is one of the reasons why it appeals so much. An awful lot of people comment about those letters. I never quite realised that it also has a broader resonance, if one could use that word, in the setting, and that's how it reads so well. Just read beyond it being an object for the sake of being an object. What other elements can one introduce? It's as in the lovely judicious use of language in a line of poetry, those simple lines of poetry that have a resonance forevermore. And that's a similar thing in all the arts. If you get those elements right, and a vocabulary of work, then you can be very, very fortunate and get that degree of depth to your work.